everyone, welcome back to Central American Voices. I'm your host Alejandra Quiroz. Gracias por sintonizarnos una vez más. So today we are with two beautiful sisters, Stephanie Concepcion Ramirez and Alondra Maria Amin. Stephanie is a Salvadoran American artist from Prince George County, Maryland, and Alondra is a Salvadoran Haitian American, both from Maryland. Alondra served 4 years in the Air Force as a dental assistant. She graduated with her Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from San Francisco State and her Master's on Occupational Therapy from Samuel Merritt University. She's currently pursuing her PhD on occupational therapy at Texas Women's University. Stephanie, she had the privilege to obtain a Bachelor of Fine Art on All Dominant University in Norfolk, Virginia, and a Master's on Fine Arts at the University of Texas at Austin. Ramirez art practice combining the language of photography with site-specific installation, text, and video. So I'm so excited to have both of you here. Thank you, to Stephanie and Alondra for reaching out, to wanting to come here and talk to me in this podcast. So welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
No, the pleasure is mine. So I'm just going to start, just straight from it. I wanted to ask you girls, how was growing up in Maryland and to know a little bit of your story and your family?
Stephanie, you want to start it out?
No, do you want to start it? I'm like, Mom.
I know, I was waiting for that to lay. I'm like, okay.
I know.
Go ahead, Stephanie, go. We're one of 8 children. Our mother, she immigrated here when she was maybe like 25, 26. She came to Washington, D.C., and then eventually to Maryland, which is pretty close. Mm-hmm. And so we grew up in Maryland. Mm-hmm. She had 7 more children. She has one that she had to leave behind in El Salvador, and she's still there. And then she had us, 7 more children in Maryland. And so we grew up in mainly I would say Montgomery County, Prince George's County. She was a single parent. And so you can imagine single parent, 7 children. She probably, at times she had 3 jobs, side hustles, welfare. We definitely had government assistance. So it was, that was it for us growing up. But as kids, we didn't really know much of that because we were for the most part, we were surviving. We were taken care of. My mom never really put that on us. And so, if the electricity went out, she would take us to the beach, and that was our summer vacation. And so we didn't know any better, but it was because it was too hot in the apartment and there was no electricity. And so let's go somewhere fun, So it was kind of like that. Yeah. Stephanie.
Yeah. Do you want to share a little bit more for you, Stephanie?
Yeah. So definitely, like she said, we grew up in a big family or a lot of siblings. And like we were talking earlier before, it was never boring in the house. We were pretty tight knit because it was just us and our mom. And yeah, growing up in Maryland, it was pretty interesting because I think Alondra, when you were little, she lived in Tacoma Park. I guess that's Montgomery County, no? Mm-hmm. Or but then for the majority of our growing up, it was predominantly in Prince George's County. And, and so, within that county, every time, somebody asked me where I'm from, I always mention the county because we moved within that county, in different areas within that county. So, it was some moving and, but yeah, she raised us, 7 of us alone. And yeah, it was pretty, looking back, it was pretty inspiring. So yeah.
Definitely. And I think how you said, even like even you mentioned right now, like you guys were never born, and I think that what is your mom's name? Is that okay to even say?
Mm-hmm.
What is your
it's
mom's
Olinda.
name? Olinda? Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a nice name. I think I have heard 3 times more than that. So that's a nice name. So Olinda, that's really inspiring, because like I mentioned before, my grandma raised 6 children. That's my mom's side. And it is, I have heard like, the thing of like never born, and the fact that, she raised you, both of you, and 5 more here in the United States alone. I think that is very inspiring. Knowing how difficult even to raise one kid in the United States can be, and knowing how, maybe the difficulties that she might have gone throughout the year, she never even put the pressure or, those, struggles on on their kids, right? Like in this case, you or Stephanie. So that's super inspiring to hear someone who migrated, raised everyone. And, now and this is something that we're going to talk about in this podcast, is about the career choices, because both of you have 2 different career choices, right? And I feel like for me, I tend to see that sometimes our parents are the ones who they inspire us to follow certain, career path, right? So I tend to say sometimes our parents are like, oh, I would love you to do this, or I would love you to do that. And some of the times are the more structure, or general careers, like a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever, right? But seeing both of you having 2 careers completely different, for me, the main impression that I have, and I haven't met your mom, or it's she never stopped. Maybe I'm just making an assumption, or right now, that she never stopped you, both of you, from pursuing what you wanted to do. But I don't know. That was something. I don't know. That's just my asking. Did she ever want to commented do that or don't do that?
Yeah. So we're gonna keep it real, okay? So
yes, we're both over here laughing.
there was yeah.
Okay.
There was never.
That's why I said I was maybe it's just assuming.
There was never stopping. She never tried to stop us, but especially for I think any children of immigrant parents that come here, there is this expectation, right? Whether it's spoken or not spoken, I think there is this expectation that these sacrifices were made, and so how do you owe me because I made these sacrifices for you? And so there's this unspoken expectation. So she never stopped us, but getting the support and sometimes hearing the words that we really wanted to hear at certain moments in our lives, I think that was more difficult to come around. I think now we're older and you come, I think, and again, this is with, I think, a lot of children with immigrant parents where, they're a lot harder on us because we do have these privileges and we do have these opportunities. And in their eyes, they oftentimes don't see us taking advantage of all of the things that they think that we have without really, really understanding, sometimes how much pressure that puts onto the child, and then our own individual barriers that we have to go through throughout our journeys, right? In choosing a career, let alone even deciding that, you're going to school, after high school or whatever.
Yes.
So, and not going straight to work, like they did. And so, yeah. That's my part.
One thing is who's older than you? Or who's the oldest? Alondra. Are you the first one, or do you have an older than the one in El Salvador? 3 more?
Yeah, I'm number 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm number 4.
Yeah, because I was okay. Yeah, because I see that a lot of people, when it's something that is so true, or parents come here and they're okay, you have all these opportunities, but the struggles are it's like one after the other. Like you don't easily just know how to apply to school. Does that make sense?
Right.
And
exactly.
I saw that, like, and maybe you both of you had like an older sister or brother in this case, that might have guide you, but maybe your older sister or your older brother, that journey was by its own, like you go to ask your parent, like, oh, can I have, what is the thing that they ask in the school? Like, can I have the taxes? And they're going to be, why do I have to give you my taxes? Like those little questions about, even applying for school. So I feel like it's true what you said, like, they, all of immigrants' parents have this expectation of, even when you graduated, of automatically having a job. Does that make sense? And you don't want to, let them down because it's like, oh, all their sacrifices. But at the same time, I feel we need to remember that here is so different. I like as the ideal that, like, the idea of how it is for our parents, like in their idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think that's the issue, right? Is that we are born into a different culture than our parents. Yeah. And so while they try to provide, and they have a great influence on how we're raised, the culture, they try to immerse us in that as much as they can. The reality of it is, if you're born in America, you're also part of the American culture. And so as a first generation American born child, you're having to try to navigate two completely different cultures. And so, there's a struggle with kids because, we're trying to please our parents. We're trying to live up to their expectations. But at the same time, in the American culture is very much me, and so it's more of what do I want to do. It's not so much that, my family, like it is in El Salvador or, in America, in Latin America, where it's more about family and doing things in community. In America, it's more of an individualistic approach, so trying to navigate that as a first generation American born can be really challenging at times because you understand the American culture and you're trying to explain certain things to your parents, right? Like even the taxes, like I need the taxes because I need that in order to apply or whatever. And they're like, ¿para qué? And you're like, I just, I need it for financial aid or whatever.
You're over.
So it can be tricky.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very tricky. I feel like even like, I mean, I immigrated to the United States. So there's a bunch of things that when I came here, I had to explain, not even to explain myself, but then explain my mom. So like, like it's always, like the system here works different than El Salvador or in Central America. That's 100%. And especially the education system over there in Central America, we get to see that, when you get out of school I'm not going to say that is guaranteed that you're going to have a job, but it's most likely because that the access to education is not as accessible. So people who have, the money to go to, even into public education, when they get out, they most likely be able to get a job, right? But here in the United States, when you graduated, when it's like after you graduate college, then you start finding a job. And it's like sometimes you feel the pressure of like, oh, like that's not what I expected. So I want to ask both of you, like the inspiration behind, how both of you choosing your career. And, for Alondra, I know you went to the Air Force. So like, I'm so excited to know about that because I love the Air Force. I wanted to join the Air Force. I feel like they come.
Stephanie, sit down. Sit down, maybe. Sit down, maybe.
I'm sorry. No, look, I have a love for both of your careers because I study film. And, photography, film, that's my thing. Like that is my thing, right? But let me tell you about the Air Force. When I was in Honduras, when I was in Honduras, I wanted to join the Air Force. And that was my thing. I was like, I'm ready to enjoy and everything. But in Honduras, we have this, dumb rules that you have to be like, I think, es 1.65 meters. So here's like 5'7" to join. And I'm 5'2.5". So like I'm like super short compared. I mean, not short, but not really small. But you know what I mean.
Well,
and then you needed to have
I definitely
like 20
wouldn't have been in the Air Force.
I was like,
I'm 5 feet, so I wouldn't have been in the Air Force.
Really, you see what I mean? Because of the idea that I couldn't join my country's Air Force, I never applied to here. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get in, because I couldn't even get in Air Force over there in Honduras. When I found out, like one of my friends got in, and like está un poquito más chaparrita que yo, I was like, huh? You told me I had like I was able to. So that's why I'm so excited for both of you. Okay, so también siento, Stephanie. So yeah,
I mean,
the like to start.
Yeah, no. The funny part is that I did try to get into the Air Force. And when I was trying to get into the military, and I got turned down because I was too short. Because I'm not even 5 feet, I'm like 4'8.5". So I had to join the Navy and not the Air Force. So that's the only reason why I joined like another branch. But Air Force was initially also like my first choice too.
Yeah.
Smart.
It's like,
but yeah, I love that. Talk about the Air Force.
Both of you. So what was the inspiration, like, if going to the military? Now that I know, like, both of you went to the military, how was like taking that first step, like, and even like telling your mom, I'm going to go to the military, because that's not even easy to say.
Well well, Alejandra, let me tell you something. It was extremely easy to tell our mom, because she wanted us to join the military.
Exactly.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, for us, growing up in a family of 7, we didn't have the funds to go to college. I barely even knew anything about an SAT. I didn't know anything about applying for financial aid, scholarships, grants. I didn't know none of that. So the military was a way out. I didn't have to meet they have tests and stuff like that, but I didn't have to do anything beyond that to join the military and have a job, that they train me for. And have something steady and will get me out of Maryland. Because when I joined, it was to get out of Maryland, because I wanted something different.
Yeah.
But I also wanted to find a way to help my mom and my family. So, the military, and it's interesting because, we grew up in, low class, very, you could call it a ghetto. And so the military recruiters, they target very specific neighborhoods because they know that you're looking for an out. And so they were all over our school recruiting students, and so our sister Nancy had joined the Navy, but she ended up getting kicked out for a medical reason. And then I was like, well, Nancy joined the Navy, and my mom was so excited. Like, I'm going to join the military, but I'm Alondra, so I'm not going to join the Navy. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go to the Air Force. So that's how I went to the Air Force, and that was that. And she was happy,
And that was fun.
That's so, what about you, Stephanie?
I mean, definitely the same reasons, right? Okay, so if you look at how many enlisted personnel go into the military, it's about 1% of the entire country. That 1% of the population, like 99% of the 1%, is usually coming from a working class, lower class, statistic or that specific demographic. So for sure, it's a way out. Like, I didn't want to join the military. I waited actually like a year after I graduated high school to leave to boot camp, because I had been working, since I was a teenager, 14, 15, 16 or whatever. And throughout high school, like, I was like, man, fuck the military. I'm not doing that. And then, like, I think it just hit me one day. I was like in the shower getting ready for work, and I was like, this ain't it. Like, whatever, I don't know what is it, but this is not it. I can't do this for every day. And so I decided, like, okay, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do it. I went to the Air Force office. Like, even I think Alondra took me one time and they were like, she's too short. So anyway, after I, got picked up my feelings or whatever, I went to the Navy office with my mom. And this was after 9/11. And this was I will say, this is one of the very few times that I saw like my mother actually be proud. Like, it was like a different kind of, it was like, to her, like, she had bumper stickers like on her car. I'm an Air Force mom. I'm a Navy mom. And I'm an Army mom. She was very, very proud of that. And so, like, a part of me did it to help my mom, to help my family financially. Like, to me, it was like a financial, which is really kind of fucked, actually. It was like a more financial decision. And of course, this was after 9/11, so they were giving bonuses to people. They gave me like 2 G's or something like that, and I thought that was like so much money. Not really realizing, like, I'm signing away my life. I'm like, am I really just worth 2 G's?
Yeah.
So, it was definitely like all of these things are going on in your mind at the time, because you don't know anything else. I never took a pre-SAT test. I always like thought for sure I'm not smart enough for college, period. Like, I'm not smart enough, and we sure as hell don't have the money. So I think for me, the military was just like that. It was just like you got to do what you got to do kind of decision for me.
Yeah, it was an out.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and definitely how Alondra said, like, the military branches, all of them, they're just target one area because, that it's a way out. It's an easy way out. And I mean, like, the benefits are there. And like you said, like, sometimes you're like, I'm signing my life away. Is it even worth it? Because I was this close here to join the Coast Corps, because I did have like an internship when I was in high school. I was this close. But something inside me, I was like, do I really want to go? Or I just, like, do I really want to go? I was already heartbroken from the Air Force all the way from Honduras. So I was like, like, I do like the water, but if I can join the Air Force, would be best. But you know what I mean? So I totally understand.
I'm like, you still can.
Now that I know, I know. My brother. I know, but I don't think so anymore. I don't know. They already broke my heart since the beginning. My brother actually thinking of joining the Air Force, later on. So it's true. Like, I feel like the military is a good way. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like is a good way for when you need it, right? Because there is facts that sometimes we don't know how to apply to college, or we don't have the resources. So when you see the military branch and you're like, okay, I can do that, because one is the physics. Like, for me, I'm scared of the boot camp and all that. That things for me, I was like, that's a whole no other thing, But like you said, like, with those benefits, I can help my family. I can then get, education. I can later get a house. There's just so many benefits, that comes with it. That when you said, like, when you need it, and maybe, for Alondra, you just wanted to get out of Maryland, or you just wanted to have something to support it, or you don't want to go into the same routine of 9 to 5 working every day, like, and that money living paycheck by paycheck, because that thing is horrible, like, it's like this. Have you seen the meme of the little, what's it called, mapache, the little raccoon that has the little thing, everything goes away? Have you guys seen them?
Yeah, I used to watch it.
It's a meme of like a little raccoon with a little like a sugar little thing, and like puts in the water. It goes like, that's how paycheck.
It goes away. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's out.
Was it cotton candy? I think it was.
Yeah. The candy. So like that type of routine, like when you come from like immigrant parents, like and we going to talk about this, like you get to the point where like it's sad to say, but how Stephanie said, like you saw your mom so proud, so happy that both of you were going to, the military, and like all the bump stickers and all that that just make you feel like, okay, like she's being proud, you know what I mean? So that's why I said, like, what would happen if, like, let's say, for example, like you're in this routine, you personally don't feel happy, and the parents are like, they don't feel happy either. So like you get to doubt yourself, like, what am I really doing? What am I, like, Is this like the life I want to do, like keep doing, you stop doubting yourself, you start like questioning yourself, and it's going to lead to many other things that, I don't know, sadly, sometimes happens to problems, it gets to family issues. So one of the things that after the military, you decided to study kinesiology and Stephanie decided to go for art. So how was the decision after the military?
Okay, after I had decided to get out of the military, people were throwing out, like, people that I knew that were getting out of the military were saying, oh, I'm going to go to school. And I was like, oh, shit, like, I don't think I can go to school. I never took an SAT. And they were like, you don't need to take an SAT if you have military experience or whatever. So I actually had a friend who looked up the local community college in Virginia when I was there. And she was like, well, what are you interested in? And at the time, like, I had taken photographs while I was on deployments. I had did like 6 deployments while I was in the Navy. And it was weird because I used photography in this way to, like, as a journal or like proof of the places that I had been, because I could, like, in my wildest dream, could never imagine visiting the countries that I had visited in the time that I was in the military. And the military provided that for me. Like, traveling, no other way. Like, there was just no way I could see me traveling in this way. And so photography for me was a way to, like, have proof that I had been to these places. And so I had mentioned to her, like, when I'm interested in photography. And so she looked it up and she was like, they have classes, you could even get like your associate's degree. And so really that's what started it for me. Like, I ended up, when I got out of the military, I enrolled into the local community college, didn't have to take no SAT or anything. And then once I graduated with my associates, I was like, I'm not done. And then I transferred to a 4-year college, got my bachelor's, and then I was like, I'm still not done, and then that was when I was really introduced to fine arts and understanding the power of art, and really, like, using storytelling and narrative in my work, in my art, and seeing, like, those social and political things that I could kind of, like, touch on and show, like, a different side of, like, the Central American narrative, which is now my focus. Like, that's what I do now. And so then I, applied to graduate school and I got into UT, and then I graduated in 2017. And so now I'm like, that's like predominantly, like, my focus is really creating a space and creating work that, like, provides another perspective of the Central American narrative and the Central American, like, experience, or Central American experience, right? And what it is to grow up the way, like, our families grew up. So, yeah.
And now, Alondra.
Okay. So for me, I think
like,
when I was
like both of you.
So when I was in the military, I was a dental hygienist and assistant, and I know that my mom had mentioned, at one point when she was in El Salvador, that she worked as an enfermera. Like she did. I don't think that was like she graduated with a degree in nursing, but I believe that she did some type of like nursing type job. So I feel like also being the older sibling and having to like help my mom with my younger siblings, that naturally became a part of my character, wanting to help. And so when I joined the military and I was a dental assistant and dental hygienist, I recognized that I felt most, like my cup felt full when I was helping people. And when people saw a difference in like their teeth, their mouth, their, people that wouldn't even smile because they felt like their mouths were so horrible. And then I would clean their teeth and then they're like, oh my gosh, bling. And so I knew that I naturally wanted to do something in healthcare, something where I'm able to give back and help people. And so I think that's what led me to, and I was always fascinated with the body, the human body and how the body worked. And so when I got out of the military, I initially wasn't planning on going back to college at all. I was just like, okay, I'm going to, well, no, that's a lie. Because I was thinking of becoming a dental assistant. But then I couldn't get into the program. And I was like, well, I need to do something. So the area that I lived in at the time, I was driving around and there was a school with two big hands, like a statue of two big hands. And I'm like, what is that? And it was a massage school and I was like, well, that's perfect. I love the body. I love the human body. Let me see what that's all about. And so I went to that school, became a massage therapist, and I did that for a few years. But I thought I was done with school. And then I got pregnant with my son, my first son. And that's when I realized, oh crap, like either you're going to continue the cycle of living paycheck to paycheck, like your mother struggled, or you're going to have to make something of yourself so that you can break the cycle and show your children that there is more that they can do. So I literally went back to school when he was about 6 months. And I was like, I'm going to become a physical therapist. And then I realized I didn't want to become a physical therapist. And then I ended up finding occupational therapy later. We had a family member that was really, really sick. And I went to go visit her. And I just remember looking at her in the ICU and thinking like, this is a single woman. Who's going to take care of her now? Who's going to brush her teeth? Who's going to drive her to the grocery store? How's she going to get in and out of the bed? How is she going to brush her hair? Like all the simple things that we take for granted. And then that's how I ended up finding occupational therapy. And then from there, it's history.
That's so, like both of you have like so inspiring stories because it's like two completely things, like you went to military and then like later you just found what you wanted to do, and when we talk, let's say for Stephanie, like you just started to document, where you have been with the military, right? Like photography. Like I told you before, like photography, like it's close to my heart. That I love photography. And then it is truly like, it is more than just a photograph if you take like the I personally love like, I see that mainly why you like to use photography is for like documentary journalists type of thing for the, now the diaspora here is that how it started, right? Like the documenting, so like documentary photography.
Not necessarily documentary photography. I think it always stemmed from, like it actually stemmed from doing a lot of like self-portraits and trying to like, I guess talk about things that I never really talked about. So like growing up, we grew up in a Catholic household. So like things that like, were I didn't really get to question before. And so that's like where it stemmed. And then it just like has bled into like other like personal experiences, personal questions, personal thoughts, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, like photography it's like any art is a way of like expressing yourself. And I know you implement, video, you implement, like I have it right here, text and like other type of languages into it to tell now the story of like the diaspora, the Central American experience. And then Alondra and the other side, after, like you wanted to help, you were interested in like the human body, from being a dentist assistant to like, coming to like learn about, you didn't want to be that, and then like turning to the other point. The other point. So I feel like, and this is like I said, it's just my impression of like the military gave both of you, like we have said, like it was escape at the beginning, but it gave you the starting point to both follow your path, follow what you wanted to do. We know why it maybe started with something pequeñito, like you starting from being one of the oldest kids, always wanting to help, the story of your mom, being an enfermera, and then how, that was close to you. And then Stephanie would always wanted to document and like storytelling. So like those like is, how can I connect this? It's weird to sometimes we don't see military as close to what is the medical field and what is art. Does that make sense? Because when we think about military, we think about arms, we think about war, like those are the big roles you have, like when we talk about military. And for a person like, like you said, you're going to that dentist side of the Air Force and getting out of there and like working with like the human body and then the occupational therapy. And then you just documenting where you were going for the military and then now transforming it into fine art. I think that I'm really happy to see both of you, following is like your path, why you since the beginning inspired, and that the military gave you like ¿cómo se llama? Una patadita para empezar.
Yeah, un patadito, but also like I think it's also important to like highlight discernment, right? Because I think like there were, at least for me, like there were like having the military experience showed me exactly what I did not want, right? And it pushed me more to the things that I like made me question, okay, what do I want? And in knowing what I did not want, I wouldn't have had the contrast to really go for what I actually wanted, I mean, and if I wouldn't have joined the military, I probably wouldn't have even ever tried art. And I've always been an artist. Like since I was little, I've always drawn, I've always cut, like I have.
It's so true.
Yeah,
I've always drawing.
Yeah.
Okay, I might be dating myself, but there used to be a commercial where they were like, submit your art and we'll tell you if you can be an artist or whatever.
And you can go to the Art Institute.
What? Yes. And she called the number.
You can call the 1-800 number.
They send you a drawing, a piece of paper, and you have to trace it. And then you submit it, and then they tell you if you're whatever. And she did that.
No, you didn't trace it. You didn't trace it. You had to eyeball it, and you had to draw exactly like it.
She was always drawing. Always.
Yo, I did. I've been drawing since I was in elementary school, and like I would draw for all my friends on the bus. They'd be like, "Oh, draw me this, draw me that," and I'm like, "Okay," I was like the person at the beach, drawing the little cartoon.
Oh my gosh! I have a drawing that Stephanie made, and if we have time, I'm going to show it at the end.
No, don't.
Okay.
Yes. Shakira.
Okay, I was a big Shakira fan. Okay, do not do that.
I can't wait.
Oh my god, I love it.
Oh my god, so I'm just saying.
This is the
God. This is so. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if I would have joined the military, I wouldn't have known what I do not want. You know, I could not stand trying to be in a box. I could not stand, being uniform with everybody else. I could not stand somebody telling me when to eat, when to shit, when to, get up. Like, I could not stand that. So without that contrast, I wouldn't have known what I wanted. So yeah, some people I still have friends in the military and they're like, you're an artist. You're so different. And I was just like, that just never was, that was like a part of me at that time, at that moment, but that wasn't fully who I am, So yeah.
I was going to say, and that's pretty much the same for me, right? Like, I think maybe it's because we're stubborn, we're Latinas, we're Salvadoreñas. I don't know, it's in our blood. Like, somebody trying to tell us what to do. I'm like, somebody trying to tell us what to do, what we couldn't do. Like, I did it, but for so long, like, I really thought I was going to like the structure because I hated, like, as a kid, I always hated finding clothes. So that's why I loved wearing uniform because I never had to worry about what to wear and everybody was wearing the same thing. But that was part of also of being poor. So I'm like, I didn't have to look for something to wear because I didn't have anything to wear. So here's a uniform and they gave me shoes. So once I was in the military, the structure was like not for me. I didn't like the politics behind it. I didn't like the abuse of power that people had. People that should not have been in power. They would get these positions of power just because they took a test and now they have power and then they treat you like crap and they don't get in trouble, but you do because you're the little man. And so I was like, no, the military is not for me, not for me. And I think that's kind of like why Stephanie and I, we do our own thing because we're not meant to fall in line and do what anybody else does, so. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. And then one of the questions that I wanted to ask both of you is like, at what point do both of you or any of you start experiencing like imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I would say for me, it started when I entered higher education. So, it probably started when I was in middle school, but I was a kid and you're a teenager, you're insecure about everything. But really, what really, when it really hit was when I was in college, in the university. Because even when I was in community college, like I was a straight A student and I felt like I could keep up with I call them the kids because I was older. Everyone in community college was like 18, 19, and I was like 27. So I felt like I was okay in community college, but when I went to a 4-year institution, that's when it really set in. And I was like, oh, like, my goodness, all these people with so much like intelligence. And here I am in this class, taking this class with them. And they're using all of these fancy words that I can't even pronounce. I don't even know what they mean. I have to go look up a dictionary, get a dictionary so I can look up words. And here they are just blah, 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 blah. And that was really kind of what started that. And I didn't even know what imposter syndrome was until I was in graduate school. And I went to a conference called the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity. And I went to one of the conferences that they had in there, and they talked about imposter syndrome. And I was like, this whole time, you mean to tell me this whole time I've been experiencing imposter syndrome? Like, I'm not going crazy. It's not just me. It's not just in my head. You mean to tell me other people experience this? How come nobody else has ever said this to me? Like, I could have put a name to what I was experiencing instead of saying, I'm not smart enough. I don't belong here. So one of my missions is to like talk about that and introduce that whenever I can to anybody, because when you can put a name to what it is that you're experiencing, you start realizing that it's not all in your head. and you do deserve to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So stop letting your imposter monster try to talk you out of it. Sorry, I got excited.
Yep.
That's okay.
It's okay. I love it though. No, it is very true because I honestly didn't know what it was imposter syndrome either. I probably like months ago, not even a year.
Mm-hmm.
When I think I read it and I was like, what is that? I thought it was like, like something very, technical to like medical to understand. And I was like, okay, so now I know what I was going through, because, for you, for me, it's like I went to college with only 3 years in this country. My English was like, like only 3 years and a half. I went to college. I was still in shock. I got into college. Oh yeah. So I got into college with 3 years in this country and, like not knowing much English. I got into the film program. Then I got like my Central America, like my double major in Central America. And I was like all good and stuff like that. Me fui a dar de pared on my first class of film. I was like, this major's not for me. This major's not for me. This major's not for me. Like, I'm like you said, I was like, what does it even mean? Like, what does this even mean? I'm still learning English and I was like, if this is the first class of cinema and television, I don't want to even imagine the rest. Does that make sense? But one point in time, that was like, okay, don't let my my decisions be just based on one class. I went again, I passed like the panzazo, stuff like that. Then like I didn't get accepted to continue in the film program, so I had to switch to TV. And I felt that even though I went all the way out, like I did my entire portfolio on film photography, because you needed to create the story like in photography, but I just didn't want to do it digital. I went like the extra mile, if you call it, and do everything film. I spent hours in the lab. I spent like wherever you can imagine, and to put it, and I got denied. And I was like, I remember telling people like, I have no plan B. I have no plan B. There's no way. Like, if I get rejected, that's it. Like, you know what I mean? This is not for me. Like, I shouldn't be doing this. Wow. And then when I got rejected, started thinking like, come on, Alejandro. Like, like, why would you think you were going to go into film? Like, it's going to be easy. You know what I mean? You start doubting so much yourself. So I had to be the smart little girl. And I went to the director and I went to ask why I was rejected. Because I was like, there's no way. For me, I was like, I did everything perfect. You know what I mean? So I went to the director, and I'm telling you stories because sometimes it's not about your work, right? Because I got rejected not because of my work. He honestly told me, if you decline or if you drop your second major, I will accept you. And I said, no. I'd rather have my Central American major rather than being in a program that is going to make me drop one of the careers that is most close to me. Does that make sense?
Me? Yeah.
So I was like, oh no. And then he was like, well, that was the only reason why we rejected it. You have too many majors for you to continue in the program.
Who's that?
Exactly. You know what I mean? I was doubting myself and it wasn't even my work. Does that make sense? So then I went to TV, and that's when I said in TV, and I remember saying this, I never knew since the beginning that I should have started in TV. That's when I focused more on documentary. That's when I found my love for production. That's when I had the most work on hand. That's when I had the most diverse crew. That's when I had the most open. people to create stories about what I wanted to create, you know, and create for Central America about immigrant. Like that's when I was able to create, to work together with others who had the same vision and love for storytelling, rather than the other ones that they were telling me, that's not the way you're supposed to do it. This is not, you know what I mean? Like that change of going to film and someone tell me, oh no, but then you start doubting yourself. You're like, you know, like, oh my God, like, of course, like, is this me? Like, I started putting myself saying, I'm not worth it. Of course, I'm an immigrant. How the heck I'm going to get into Hollywood? You know, that goes into your head. And then to find out that it wasn't there. So I feel you in that, you know, like, and for me, I feel like I just wanted to be a little like girl just to go and ask the person, because I was like, I did everything. I wanted them to tell me if my application or portfolio wasn't good enough, to tell me in my face. Because for me, it was perfection.
Yeah.
And that's when I found out that I shouldn't be doubting myself because it wasn't my work.
No, I was just going to say, I applaud you for going, and asking and following up, because a lot of people don't. They just take that answer for what it is. And then you start formulating your own opinions and ideas as to why you weren't successful, why you didn't make it. And you really don't know until you ask. And for a lot of people, they don't follow up like that. So I applaud you for going and asking. And I do believe that everything happens for a reason. So look where it took you, you know, none of that would have happened. None of that would have happened if you had been in that program.
Yeah, definitely.
And, but see, I think it's important to also like look at the structures that put us in the position to question ourselves, right? You didn't raise those questions until, like, it's just, I don't know. Like, I think it's really important to understand that these institutions and these spaces that we are like trying to navigate and survive in really, are the spaces where we start to really fully feel the impact of that imposter syndrome. And I think like, for him to say like, well, you have to drop this thing. And it's really where he stands and where he believes what you can handle and what you can't, you know what I'm saying? And somebody else like made that decision for you. And that's like really fucked up. And it had nothing to do with your work, but you were already questioning yourself. Like, well, who do you think you are? Like, you had all these excuses as to why they didn't choose your work. And look, it had nothing to do with your work. It had everything to do with their perception of you and what they thought you could or could not handle, and that again, without that contrast, you wouldn't be going in the way you're going in now, right? The way you're making it a point that no, I'm going to highlight and do the kind of work that I want to do and highlight the people that I want to highlight and do, talk about what I want to talk about. So it's good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like it's really to point out that, because sometimes I feel like we talk about so many times, like, the system will make us doubt ourselves. Like, it will make us doubt, people will think that we're not capable, right? You're not capable of having 2 majors. You're not capable of doing this stuff. Like, they will make you think, but like you said, they shouldn't be telling you what you can and why you cannot do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think nothing gets a Latina more fired up than when you tell her she can't do something. Just saying.
Oh, yeah. And then never. That is true. That is true.
She had to go back. Never.
Never. Because I remember, and then during all this time that I told you, like I feel like, hopeless. Because I did hope. Like I was like I told you at the beginning, I said I had no second. I don't have no plan B in my in my plan of like my career. That's what I felt. I never told my mom because I felt, she's gonna be mad at me. just like, you know, like I felt like, I don't know, like, you know, like I didn't want to disappoint her. And when I told her, she felt bad that I didn't tell her, because then she was like, now I understand why you were so quiet. Because I'm not a quiet person. She was like, now I understand why you're so quiet, because you were trying to figure it out what to do. And then she told me, like, I'll never be telling you, like, oh, you should have tried more. You know, you should have worked harder to get in. Because she told me, like, I know you're capable. So when I told her, oh, well, they didn't get in because of this, she was like, well, ellos es que se lo pierden. That's what she literally told me.
Yeah.
Because she knows. Yeah.
Right? Oh my God. Seriously. But thank you, girls. You know, let me see. Yeah, but you know, imposter syndrome, I like it, that we said, is something that we don't, it doesn't get introduced to us what it actually is till after we went through that. You know what I mean? Like, or when we're going through that. So I wanted to ask to Stephanie, like, when was the point when you felt that way?
Yeah, I think it was definitely higher education. I mean, school. Community college, I kind of felt it because I also was one of the older ones in the school, whatever. But I managed, and then it was when I transferred to a 4-year, was when I really started to feel it, and then especially like as your own experience, Alejandra, like when you start to throw in like art classes and then like this like fine arts and stuff, there is like this class thing that happens or elitism that happens in that department and program. And it's a lot of like, at least in my experience of graduate school, there was a lot of heavy theory and research, and you had to read these books and like these writers and know everything, and not just read it, but also like remember it and use it in your work. And for me, that was really difficult because, like I said, like my work stems from a very personal place. And I had to I was always told, oh, your work is so personal. I was told by an artist, and he was Latino, he was Mexican, a visiting artist, who told me, you should find a book that's parallel to your story and make work about the book and not your story. Because he said my work was too personal. And my thing is that like what I was essentially telling them was that experience is enough. I don't always need to have a book to back up the facts of these things actually happening to me and me experiencing these things. These things are true. These things are my reality, and not just my reality, but my family's reality and many other families, you know, here in the US. So, and I think that's where, like, for me, storytelling, a lot of things that are passed on to us in our communities, especially in the Latin community, but specifically in the Central American community, where we have seen, you know, trauma and wars separate families and all of these events that have happened. Really, there's not much documentation of those things, right? Because both governments were trying to obscure these facts, right? So a lot of the things that were passed down are passed down through storytelling and witness. Yep. And for me, I highlight storytelling, you know, and I make that as like a source. And even the misinformation or the gaps or the unknown, I use that all as material to make the work that I'm making. Because, you know, unfortunately for some of us, we don't have all the answers, and we're not always going to have a book to refer to. So I think for me, it was like, the imposter syndrome was definitely in higher education. It was very, very highlighted in graduate school. I didn't know that those terms at the time, but I also was trying to like stand my ground in knowing what I knew from firsthand experience and trying to speak from that like honest place, right? So
yep. Yeah, and definitely I think what you were telling me remembers me of like another friend that I talked. I you might know her though. She's the person behind Ichik Design. Like she does earrings. Yeah, she's like amazing earrings. And one time I went for a coffee, and then she was telling me the stories when she was in art school, and that a professor asked her, was like, oh, like, so from where are you referring, like, to the art, and like, who are you reading in order to come up with this art? And then she was like, oh, about like el Popol Vuh. And then the person was so confused, like, you shouldn't be using that, like, you know, this is about, you know, or like it was personal story. So like how you said, I feel like when we have stories, for example, in Central America, that most of the storytellings are, like I said, passed down, or we are in Asian books that most of the people don't even take in consideration, right? Or there's an experience you went through that. You as an artist should have control, and even in art school, of what your art you want to represent. Does you know what I mean? Because your art represent yourself. You know, like you don't want to put whatever they want you to write, and you don't feel the connection, because that what's the point of, what is the point of doing art? What is the point of doing art at the point, right? Like what is the point? So, you know, like I feel you in the point, because like when you go through these systems, and like, you know, especially in art, that todo tiene sus palabras todas medias raras. Digo raras because I don't understand them sometimes. Or like, you know, like, oh, what is this? You know, this, you know, or like this type of way of painting, this type of way of creating. They're like, but when you try to put yourself, you know, like, this is what I feel like, this is the story of, I don't know, migration, but in a very artistic way, they're going to be like, that, no, that is, you know what I mean? Like, so for me, it's like art, I see it as not only transforming, but it's like the way the artist is expressing a feeling. For me, if the artist is not connected to the art, what is even the point to even do it? Like, so for a professor, or like to going through art school and having someone to question that, it's not because you're not capable of making art, making amazing pieces. It's just because they want you to continue having this box of whatever they want you to think is art. And whatever is outside of this box is not art. It's not even close to. So, I don't know. And usually, like, for all three of us, it came when we were in higher education. You know, when we are at those spaces, when we thought we would never be, you know, when we were little, because you know, like, you know, the money and everything, you know.
I know.
And then you get there, and then you're like, of course, you know, you felt that same feeling when I was like, when you were little, like, I don't have the money to apply. I don't know, you know, my SAT score is not that good, you know, like, or the ACT or whatever test they want you to have. And then you come to realization that it's not your work. It's not that you don't know, you know, this higher words. It's not that you're not capable. It's just that they want you to stay in a box that we shouldn't be put on, because that will not define us. You know what I mean? Like, whatever career all three of us chose, or in the future you want to choose something else, is for us to take in, you know, como se llama, like, take it and make it our own, not for them to you have to make it your own instead of just being part of it, you know? So, for the last close things that I want to ask both of you, in the closest statement, what would you say what is something you'll tell someone that is doubting themselves in their career choices, and or in general?
Okay. I would say, knowing what I know now, I would say you have to really sit with yourself. Give yourself time, give yourself space to be able to question what you really want in life, and really try to pay attention to any like gut feeling or any like emotion that comes up. I think it's essential to really work with your intuition when it comes to any career choice, Because if you continue to chase paper, if you continue to chase something, you may always be chasing that, right? Or you may get to that, and then you may chase, it'll be something else that you feel like will fulfill you. And I think what's most important, and I have to remember this myself, is that oftentimes, like, you already know the answer. You know everything. All of the answers are already in you. You just have to allow yourself to sit silently with yourself, give yourself the space and give yourself the time, and really pay attention to what you're feeling and what is coming up for you when you ask yourself these questions of like what you really want to do in life. So, I mean, that would be my only advice, is to really go with your intuition.
Yeah. And for me, to build on what Stephanie was saying, is that, I think, at least for me anyways, figuring out what I wanted to do with my life was like the hardest thing ever, because I didn't have, some families have people who are already doctors. And so the kids know they want to be doctors or lawyers, and then they know that they want to be lawyers, but we didn't have that growing up. And so I don't know that I really knew what all of my options were. And then when I found out that I had so many options, I didn't know how to even narrow down those options. And I didn't even realize what I wanted my career to be until I was in my 30s. So I think, and that's not the case for everybody, obviously, but if you find out what it is that you really want to do, what you're passionate about, kind of like what Stephanie was saying, if that's really what's in your heart, write down, like, what are the steps to get to that? And then as you're writing down all those things and you start working towards that, I encourage people to also write down all of their accomplishments too. All those little accomplishments, like, I got an A in this class. I got a 4.0 this semester, or I got accepted into this college. Like, all of those things are accomplishments that the imposter syndrome chooses to not recognize, And so I think when we're always reflecting and looking back on the things that we've accomplished, we start to realize that we do have the ability to go far in life. We do have why is it that only these people get to do it? Why can't I? Like, that's BS. We can, but we start we start putting the doubt in ourselves. We start allowing society to kind of form who fits in those places, and it's not you. When in reality, it's really meant for anybody. So fit yourself in there and do what you got to do. But you also have to recognize what you also have to be mindful to acknowledge all the things that you've accomplished as well. And I think for me, that's something that I struggle with, because when you experience imposter syndrome, it's very hard to appreciate or even sit with success, because we're too busy worrying about the next thing that we have to do. And so these things happen to you. They're amazing. And you're already like 10 steps ahead. Like, okay, well, my next thing that I have to do is over here, and people are trying to celebrate this, and you can't even celebrate it for yourself. So write down your successes as you're going along the way. Yep. That's my advice.
Yeah. And celebrate those things intimately too. I mean, it doesn't always have to be like a grand thing either. I think we also live in this time where we want to share every single thing on social media. And I think there's a performance of like trying to keep up to go to the next thing and the next thing and be like, look, what else? And that's one of the reasons like I'm off of Instagram right now, because I've taken a step back from making art for the past like over a year now. And you feel guilt, especially when you're, when you feel that imposter syndrome, you're constantly trying to prove something, and you never do like acknowledge the things, or you play down the things that you've done in the past. And so even if it's intimately, celebrate those little things, and they may not even be like a score on a test. They could be like, you know, you got up and made your bed today. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you go through it, and especially when you're trying to navigate higher education or spaces like that in different institutions and systems like this, like when you're in it, it's really difficult to even have one singular thought in your head, let alone like pay attention to the little victories and stuff. So
yeah, definitely. And you know, I just want to thank both of you to coming and talk to me you know, today and share both of your experience and, you know, taking a little bit of time. Yo sé que Estefanía se quiere ir a dormir. Stephanie's like, oh, I see my bed and all this stuff. It's like,
I'm like, somebody give her a blanket.
This is the first episode that I had two sisters, and I had so much fun. Oh my God.
I honestly feel like we have kept it down a little bit, because if Stephanie was like wide awake, it would have been crazy. Okay.
Right. But, you know, thank you. I really appreciate both of you for coming here, sharing the story, you know, like of things that I didn't know. You know, Stephanie didn't, like, I didn't know you were in the Navy. Until we're like, oh, I was in the Navy
I don't
too.
even like
you
to
know,
imagine
like,
that part. Yeah.
You have to.
I really appreciate it. You know, I really appreciate both of you, you know, coming, sharing your story, and to come and talk to me. So, do you have anything else to say before? Sorry, my phone. Before I close everything, I told you something was gonna fall at the beginning.
I think her face is priceless.
Exactly.
I think I don't have any less no burning comments. I just want to thank you so much for creating this platform and this space for Central American voices to be heard and inviting us to be a part of this. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. I'm gonna be like, you guys, you need to listen. Come check it out.
Thank you.
Yes. I mean, for real, like for a person that like is you know, listening to podcasts while I'm at work, while I'm at my 9 to 5 and stuff is really like, I'm so glad that I came across your podcast. So thank you so much, Alejandra, for doing this work and deciding to like, you know, pioneering really, because there's not a lot of spaces. And I feel like, you know, Central Americans are on the come up, you know, we're like, we've been here this whole time. And I think now we're finally starting to like create space for ourselves. And so just thank you so much for making this and taking the time and saying yes to us, you know?
No, definitely. You know, since it was Stephanie who reached out to me, right?
Yeah.
It was Alondra. Okay, yeah. I was like, I'm confused. I remember one of you like did it, and I was like, oh, that's so fun. And when you said like your friend, like your sister, I'm like, yeah, that's so cool. But, no, thank you. You know, thank you for both of you. I really appreciate your time, and I cannot wait to have this podcast out. So thank you. If you'd like to support this podcast and my work, you can donate through our website or become a patron. Don't forget to check our website at centralamericanvoices.com, where you can subscribe to our mailing list. Follow us on Instagram at Centam Voices Podcast and on Twitter at Centam Voices Pod. Like and follow our Facebook page, where you can join the Central American Voices Facebook group. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we're going to continue sharing these episodes as a video format. But don't forget to come back for our next episode.